Good morning. I'm Debbie Hersman, and it is my privilege to serve as the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. Today, I am joined by my colleagues, Vice Chairman Chris Hart, Member Robert Sumwalt, Member Mark Rosekind, and Member Earl Wayner. We are all really excited to be here with you today to unveil our most wanted list for 2014. First, I'd like to thank Bob Skinner and the TRB, the Transportation Research Board, for hosting us. The TRB has been at the forefront of transportation research for decades, and so it's fitting that we're announcing our 2014 Most Wanted list at their annual meeting here. We know that lawmakers around the country are returning to work, and it is our hope that transportation remains an issue that they can rally around and find common ground on. And for us, the 2014 Most Wanted list highlights our priorities so that safety will stay at the forefront of their deliberations on transportation. TRB's theme this year is celebrating our legacy, anticipating our future. And there is much to celebrate. Transportation is safer than ever. But still, every year, we have more than 35,000 fatalities in transportation in the United States. We can and must do better. Expectations for safe transportation are as woven into our lives as the things that we do every day. Wake up, shower, make coffee, so that when we put our children on the school bus in the mornings to go to school, when we board trains or get in our cars to travel to work, we expect to arrive safely, and we take those trips for granted. But at the NTSB, we focus on those rare and disastrous situations when things don't go as planned. Last month in New York, people were returning home from the Thanksgiving break. Some were heading in the city to do their Christmas shopping, and still others were going to work. A Metro North commuter train derailed in the Bronx. 4 died, and dozens of others were injured, some sustaining life-altering injuries. Other accidents on Metro North, the Chicago Transit Authority, the San Francisco's Bay Area Rapid Transit System, all of those put the emphasis for us on transit and mass safety operations. Passenger rail is safe for the overwhelming majority of riders and employees that work on those systems. But our investigations have pointed out ways to make it even safer. Positive train control might have prevented the accident in the Bronx. Beyond this technological advance, we're also focusing on operational safety throughout transit operations so that more people can come home safely. And we know that when an accident occurs, improved crashworthiness enhances your chances of surviving or coming home safely. Improving the structural design of the vehicles we travel in enhances your chances of coming home safely. In the air, restraining every passenger safely and appropriately, especially our children, ensures their chances of coming home safely. And that's why we have our Most Wanted list, steps that we can take today so that more people make it home safely. And that is always something to celebrate. So let's take a look at our 2014 Most Wanted list issues. Can we run the video? I'd like to acknowledge our staff. We have a number of our communications team who are in the room. They're largely responsible for our ability to pull off an event like this and also provide all the supporting materials that you're going to find on our website, including this video. So thank you. Thank you to all of our team. Thank you for everyone who worked so hard on this. As you can see, our most wanted list for 2014 covers all modes of transportation. There are 4 new issue areas that we are highlighting: helicopter safety, passenger vessel safety, safety in mass transit, and improved occupant protection. And a 5th, general aviation safety. We're sharpening our focus this year to improve awareness of weather hazards. We're beginning conversations. As families dream about taking that vacation cruise, we're engaging with the industry to talk about enhancements or improvements to safety. We're taking action. In April, we'll finalize our report on last year's ferry accident, the accident that occurred on the commuter ferry, C Street, Wall Street, in New York City. So we'll be finalizing that report as well. 5 areas remain on our most wanted list from 2013. They include impaired driving, distraction in transportation, fire safety, pipeline safety, and positive train control. We're keeping the pressure on, and we'll be covering new ground in the coming year. Soon, we'll complete our investigative work on the fire that occurred on the 787 battery in Boston's Logan last year. And we'll be applying the lessons learned that were gathered during our forum and our investigative hearing into lithium-ion batteries. We're going to be working towards better fire safety in transportation this year. We'll also be issuing our final report on the December 2012 pipeline rupture in Sissonville, West Virginia shortly. That accident, many of you all will remember, destroyed homes and rendered an interstate highway inoperable for hours. And with impaired driving and distraction, we're seeing action across the country with very involved legislators and new laws being introduced and new bills being introduced. We know that there are changes that can be made both at the federal level and at the state level in addressing these issues to address 2 of the biggest killers on our highways. In the coming weeks and months, we'll be announcing other initiatives and actions that will directly support the 10 issues that we've identified today that we'll focus on in 2014. Not everybody will like the action that we take, and not everybody will agree with what we have to say. But the NTSB speaks for the traveling public, and we are engaging every stakeholder, including the traveling public, in an ever-broadening discussion on these issues. That means every channel: live tweeting from this meeting, making accident photos available on Flickr, posting our press conferences on YouTube, creating videos like the one that you just saw that can be used by advocacy groups to advance our message, and updating our website to make sure that the public is informed and engaged in the work that we're doing. The most wanted list is our roadmap for 2014. If decision makers act, for travelers leaving the house every morning, like each of you, to get here, it will be much more. It will be the safe path home. So each board member is going to focus on 2 issues over the course of the coming year. They will spend a lot of time advocating, working with different groups to address these issues and to bring attention to them. They'll be testifying in state legislatures and up on the Hill. We'll be working very hard to make sure that these issues get the attention that they deserve. And I'm going to introduce each of the board members and the issues that they'll be focusing on. And we'll be pleased to take your questions shortly. I'll serve as the moderator, and each of the board members will be able to talk a little bit about the issues that they're focused on. Vice Chairman Hart will talk about helicopter safety and pipeline safety. Member Sumwalt will talk about distraction and positive train control. Member Rosekind will talk about impaired driving and fire safety. And Member Weiner will talk about passenger vessel safety and general aviation hazardous weather communication and information. And I will talk about mass transit safety as well as occupant protection. Thank you all for being here, and we stand ready to address any questions that you have. We also are live tweeting, and we have folks who might be participating via our hashtag NTSB Most Wanted List, MWL, and so we may be taking questions from them as well. Anybody in the room have questions for us, either about specifics of the issues that we're going to be focusing on or about our process? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Pat Ambrosio with Bloomberg BNA. Was there any consideration adding transport of crude oil by rail to the list in light of recent incidents?
Sure. The question came from Bloomberg BNA, and it was with regard to whether or not we considered adding transport of crude oil to our most wanted list. This is certainly a very hot issue right now. We are paying a lot of attention to it. We have ongoing investigations, both that have occurred here in the United States. We had an accident that occurred in Castleton, North Dakota, just at the very end of last month. Member Sumwalt and the rail team were on scene over New Year's. Very significant accident for us as we are investigating that. We're also supporting our Canadian counterparts in several investigations that they are conducting. The one that has garnered the most attention is the event that occurred in Lac-Mégantic last July, killed 49 people. And so this is an issue that clearly legislators all over the country in a local way are paying attention to, and also at the federal level. The NTSB has been active on this issue. We have recommendations dating back decades expressing our concern about what's being transported, how it's being transported, and we all are seeing in the aftermath of some of these accidents that they're a real challenge for the community that's responding. We will continue to be active on these issues. Clearly, we are an organization that is driven by the accidents that take place. And so there are going to be things that we will be focusing on in the coming year through our work, through the recommendations that we issue, through the reports we issue, and by the climate and the environment that's taking place around the country and in legislative areas. We're working very closely with our counterparts at the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, the TSB, and we will be coming out with additional products over the course of the next year that will keep attention focused on the safety of this issue. Yes, sir, in the back.
Could you talk about your process in determining what your most wanted are? And one of the reasons we ask the question is that there are some modes of transportation that have significantly higher number of fatalities than the modes of transportation you're targeting on your list right now.
Sure, there's two questions. The first one was, what is the process for determining what issues will be on our most wanted list? And the second one has to do with the number of fatalities that occur in the different modes and how that helps us to make some of those determinations, or how that influences our decisions. The process of determining which issues go on our most wanted list is something we actually revised in the last few years. Many of you who have been around for a long time, you may remember we used to have two separate lists, a federal list and a state most wanted list, where we identified different issues. About 3 years ago, we consolidated those lists into one. We limited the number of issues that we would focus on in each year to 10 issues. And so each year we consider issues that we think are ripe for placement on the most wanted list in the following year. We look at the products that we're going to be producing, the events that we may be holding, forums or investigative hearings, and we certainly look at where the legislatures are in the states at the federal level and the issues that they may be considering. We look at the regulators and the areas that they're focused on through their regulatory action or through the work that they're doing. So we identify those issues, and because most of our fatalities occur on our nation's highways, we talked about 35,000 fatalities, 90% of those are occurring on our nation's highways. If it was all about the numbers, the only issues on our list would be about highway safety. But we are the National Transportation Safety Board. We investigate accidents in all modes of transportation, and we have to identify ways to improve the safety in each of those modes. So we make some choices and we make decisions. Each year we have the opportunity to modify our list, and so we can put new issues on to bring attention to them. We evaluate our list to determine if we were effective in the past year or if we think there's still work that can be done. We have a very engaged and very active board. I'm a privilege to be a part of it. They each carry a very heavy load when it comes to working on their individual or respective issue areas. We've made significant progress in some of the areas that we've worked in the past few years, and that's because of the work of our board members and our staff. We'd like to put a lot more things on our most wanted list. We just simply have to be selective about those 10 issues. We have over 1,000 open recommendations right now. Our most wanted list issue areas address many of those. In the far back.
Can you talk about distracted driving, go a little in depth on some of the things you're going to look at, maybe where you plan to look at options?
Thank you for that question. It's about distracted driving, and so I'm going to yield the microphone to Member Sumwalt.
Thank you. We've issued a number of recommendations related to distracted driving, but distractions on the most wanted list is not just limited to highway. We see distractions in all modes of transportation. So we have come out with recommendations for states to pass laws to prohibit the use of wireless communications devices. That's one of the major areas that we feel we can make a contribution. But again, we're not just looking strictly at distracted driving. We're looking at, and we have issued recommendations related to all modes of transportation. Thank you very much.
Yes, Alan.
I was hoping you could speak a little more about the transit issue. What are the threads that tie together some of these accidents we've seen recently, and even maybe going back to Chatsworth?
Sure. The question is about operational safety in rail mass transit and our focus on those issues this year and what are the threads that tie them together. I would say that there are several issues that we have focused on over the last few years. We see them come up again and again, whether it's in Chatsworth, whether it's in the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority's accident that occurred here in 2009 in Washington, D.C., or the recent investigations that we've talked about really across the country, from MBTA to CTA to BART. We have been all over the country. We see common themes. We see operational practices that really could be improved, and we see issues of safety culture. And so those themes have come up again and again in some of our investigations in the past. They're things that we're looking at very closely. Safety management systems has been on our most wanted list before, and safety culture is very closely tied to some of those areas.
Just to continue that thought, explain in kind of lay terms what you mean by safety culture or lack of that.
Sure. The question is, could we explain a little bit more about some of those issues that we've identified, specifically safety culture? When we talk about safety culture, it's not a single issue. It's really about the feel of the organization and how they respect safety, not just from the board and the top levels of the organization all the way down to the employees that work on the ground. And so, for example, I will give you an accident that we investigated several years ago where we did identify safety culture. Washington's Metro. We had a fatal crash in 2009. We issued a report about a year later. In that report, we identified multiple failures that had taken place that actually resulted in this accident occurring. We had failures that occurred in the operations center, in the operations control center. We had multiple alarms that were going off, hundreds of alarms every day, to the point that the people who worked there tuned them out. They actually got an alarm. They got a warning letting them know that there was a false signal telling this train to proceed into track that was already occupied. But it didn't mean anything to them because they were getting alarms about everything, about fire doors in stations being left open, about emergency exits being left open. And so that was happening in their operations center. We had a board that didn't even have the safety of the operations in their mission statement. And in fact, they were paying more attention at the board level to schedules and on-time performance than they were to safety. We also had employees who were not reporting things that had happened. We had employees who had information, but it wasn't being shared with others. They actually had a close call several years before in a different location on the railroad. They had devised a process to identify this failure. The maintenance department had devised a process, the engineering department had devised a process to identify the failure, but it actually wasn't incorporated into what the maintenance employees were doing every day out on the line. Multiple opportunities missed. Multiple chances for an organization to use the information that it had, to communicate better, to create a culture of safety, to show that safety was valued and it was a priority. Those things were missed. Last year in November, we held a hearing on Metro North. There were 4 accidents last calendar year that the NTSB investigated on Metro North Railroad. In the November hearing, we had 4 issue areas that we looked at. The 4th of those issue areas was the safety culture of Metro North. We surveyed employees and we heard from their CEO. So that might give you a bit of a sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about safety culture. It's not one thing that fails. It's not one person that makes a mistake, but it's creating a robust enough organization that you can trap things before they result in catastrophic events. It's about good reporting. It's about having an open culture, a reporting culture, sharing information, and it's also about using data and information to make changes and to measure the impact of the work that you're doing and those changes, to continuously improve every day. It's extremely hard. They have such a tough job. They move millions of people every day, but it's a critical responsibility and it needs to be done in a more effective way. Yes, hi Mike.
Well, not directly on this list, you did mention lithium-ion batteries, and as you know, you spent a lot of time last year on the subject, and you just recently sent an investigator of this latest incident in Japan. I know it's early, but is there anything that you've heard about the severity of this incident, this recent incident, or how limited it is that could tell you more about the success of the repairs that are being made for those batteries?
The question is about the recent event that occurred in Japan with a 787 and a lithium-ion battery. The NTSB is supporting work that's going on in Japan, being led by the JCAP, the civil authority in Japan. We will support the work that we're doing. We will dispatch an investigator to observe some of the work that's being done, but I will absolutely refer any findings or investigative outcomes to them as they're leading the investigation. But along those lines, since we're talking about lithium-ion batteries and concerns, I would like to turn it over to Member Rosekind to talk about some of the things that we might be doing on fire safety this year, and that does include our work on the lithium-ion batteries.
So thanks for the chance to actually broaden the issue, because fire safety is on the list. It was last year as well, and that's really focused on 2 big areas. One is prevention, which has to do with design and materials, and then the early detection and suppression. And I think what's important actually about your question is this highlights that fire safety is an issue across all modes. In motor coach, we have issues around wheel wells. In marine, we have issues around engine fires, and clearly the one that's captured a lot of attention is around lithium-ion batteries. And of course, your question highlighted the issue related to the airplane, specifically in its operation, but we also have issues, of course, about lithium-ion batteries being cargo. And that's where early detection goes on. So we've actually had accidents where there has not been enough time between detection and an opportunity to act. So fire safety is very broad, and again, I think part of it is really recognizing that it's both prevention as well as the early detection, suppression, and that we're talking fire issues across all modes. Thank you.
Yes.
I understand that bus safety is in your 10 most wanted, but it's not named something specific. You were pretty critical of what the government was doing with bus safety earlier last year. Do you think they've turned the corner so you don't need to name it specifically?
The question is that the specific issue area of oversight and bus safety operations is not included on our 2014 most wanted list, while it was on our 2013 most wanted list. We certainly saw a change in enforcement posture over the last year at FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety This is an industry that is very wide-ranging, very low barriers to entry with respect to conducting operations over the highways. And so we know that we will continue to see events that we'll have the opportunity to focus on. We believe some progress was made, but more needs to be done. Some of the issues that are on our most wanted list that would touch this include our focus on occupant protection, specifically with the design of the buses, both to prevent ejections through the large windows that actually have the potential to pop out when these vehicles are involved in an accident, as well as roof crush. We've seen too many accidents where we've lost passengers because of the way that the accident occurred. These buses do not perform well when they run off the road, and particularly when rollovers take place. So we're looking for improvements to the passenger compartment, which includes things like three-point belts, but also that improves the design of the vehicle. You and I both know we're going to see more accidents when it comes to this area on our roadways. We've got to make sure that the states and the federal agents that are responsible for the oversight have the tools that they need, that they are resourced appropriately to do the work that needs to be done, and that they take action when they find problems. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Hursman, I wanted to ask, was it this year that the term substance impaired driving was introduced?
Actually, the question has to do with substance impaired driving, so I'm going to defer to my colleague, Member Roskine.
Thanks for the question, because that was a good pickup. What's really significant about that is that alcohol-impaired driving has been a focus of the NTSB for a long time. There hadn't really been much focus recently, like over a decade since our last recommendation. And so it was last year that we started the translation and transfer from alcohol-impaired to substance-impaired, and that's to acknowledge the alcohol as well as other substances which are illegal prescription and over-the-counter medications that can also impair driving. And I just have to get this out. In 2012, we're talking 10,322 people lost their lives in substance-impaired related driving. And when you talk about where the big numbers are, that's a third of those lives lost on the roadway, part of why we have to really keep it focused. So let me just finish by saying that's why the NTSB has refocused and re-energized efforts. Over a year, there were 5 activities, and we have 19 new recommendations that we're pushing to try and reach 0 deaths related to substance-impaired driving. Thanks.
Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Clearly, you guys are all behind these 10 issue areas, and you're going to work to make sure that we can take them off of our list next year because so much progress has been made. I want to say thank you to all of the different groups in the room. Each of you all play a very vital role. I know some of you may not support some of the issues that are on the most wanted list, but we want to engage. We want to continue the dialogue with everyone who's involved in the transportation industry. That's what will make us better, and that's what will save lives. Thank you very much.